Okay, it's robot fighting time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Josh. Everybody knows that. So the questions I asked for my survey, I just want to jump right into it, is because I asked everybody in my survey was how many of you knew Jennifer Lopez? Everybody said 100% was the verdict that yes, they knew Jennifer. How about Roberto Clemente? 38%. That's for my baseball players out there, fans. They said yes. Jose Feliciano, a staggering 25%. But now if I said to you, if you knew the Feliz Navidad song, you would say, yeah, I know that guy. So yeah, so even though all these famous people have different characteristics, different personalities, and different jobs, they all have one thing similar in common, and that is that they're all Puerto Ricans. So my parents are from Puerto Rico. I am not. But however, growing up in a Hispanic household, I got to experience the Spanish culture, the traditions, all that my parents experienced as a child, as children. But I never questioned the mere thought of what it meant to be the understanding of what it means, the Puerto Rican history. So in my research, I was able to use 5 credible articles that allowed me to see those that paved the way for me and the celebrities such as Jennifer Lopez. All right, so today I will be discussing the history of the island, the islanders' immigration to America, and the importance of citizenship. Now, for many, Puerto Rico is known for its beaches, its tourist attractions, but to go further into understanding the history, we got to see where it all began, and this all began with the first Taínos, the Native Americans that were on the island. They were a passive group. They had a theocratic government where they had elected a chief that would govern over the people. But their type of government allowed them to believe in many different gods. But however, according to the history.com, the Puerto Rico native Taino population were hunter-gatherer ancestors that settled on the island more than 1,000 years before the Spanish arrived. They called themselves Borinque, which is referred to as themselves as Boricua, which is a term that we use today for, in other words, of saying instead of Puerto Rican, I'm Boricua. So after 1,000 years of prosperity on the land and peace, the Taínos had to face the Spanish Inquisition. It was during Christopher Columbus' second expedition to the West Indies in 1493 that we see that he claimed the island for Spain. And it was in 1508 that Juan Ponce de Leon created the first settlement on the island. So that was another question that I had asked in my survey. But it was later in 1521 that Puerto Rico would eventually change its name for the very last time to what is now known as Puerto Rico, which means, and translated, to the rich port. After the Spanish arrived, the Taínos did not like this, so they rebelled. And according to the article called Taino Indian Culture by author Maglia Rivera, states that the settlers came in 1508. And since there was no reliable documentation, the anthropologists estimated that the numbers had been between 20,000 and 50,000 Taínos that had died from maltreatment, disease, and unsuccessful rebellion that had diminished their numbers to about 4,000. By 1515, in 1544, a bishop counted only 60 of those Taínos left, and soon they were lost as well. So not only were the Taínos were slaves, but they also brought over African Americans that were put into slavery in order to provide for the Spain's demands. It wasn't until 1873 that the island would be eventually abolish the slavery. As the slaves and the Africans continued to grow on the island, they continued to populate. It went from about 71,000 in 1775 to about 331,000 in 1832. From 1775 to the end of the 19th century, it multiplied more than 13 times in size. So the island was becoming more popular with Spanish, is where we get our language. The Indians were the first that were there, and then the African Americans. This is important because as the island began to experience some changes, they had also changes in leadership. Through this, the people wanted to dream and wanted better futures for the people. Now that sounds very similar, right? If we look at our history in America, the colonists wanted to rebel against Great Britain. And with this, they formed a rebellion. So in 1868, the very first rebellion happened in Puerto Rico. It was by the leader at the time was Emmanuel Rojas. He banded a group of Spanish farmers and a bunch of slaves together, about 600 total, and marched themselves to the front gates of where the Spanish were at, and tried to break the control. This was called El Grito de Lares. Basically, it translates to the cries of Lares, because unfortunately he was unsuccessful and eventually thrown into prison. Through this defeat, he was able to unite the people and give them a reason to feel that the need to be free. He united them. Through the history, we see that through the Spanish, the Taínos, and the slaves, that these groups come together to make up what my race is, which is Puerto Ricans. It shows the diversity and how important it was to be free, and to eventually this freedom will lead to our citizenship. It's important. The next survey question that I had asked you guys was, is Puerto Rico a state? And many of you answered it correct. About 75% of you said no, it's not. It's a Commonwealth. It's a U.S. territory. So how did we get there? All right, that's the question. It's because in July 19, according to the history.com, in July 1898, during the Spanish-American War, the U.S. Army's forces occupied Puerto Rico at Gracida, the island's south side, under the Treaty of Paris, which formally ended the war. Later that year, Spain succeeded Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines, and Cuba to the United States. And this allowed Puerto Rico to be politically and economically dependent for the very first time. But after the treaty was signed, America had a question: what do we do with Puerto Rico and all these other Caribbean islands? So, in between 1898 and 1952, Congress enacted 11 citizenship laws for Puerto Rico, extending at least 3 different types of citizenships to the persons born in an island, namely the Puerto Rican citizenship. In addition, in 1989, the U.S. and policymakers began to describe the citizen status of the persons born in Puerto Rico as mere statutory citizens subject to the plenary of the Congress, according to Vender and Santiago from my credible source. I'm sorry. Lastly, I would like to talk to you about the impact of the U.S. immigration to the United States. So we see the Puerto Rican race expand to New York, to Philadelphia, to many different parts of the United States. This allowed for the people to grow. So I asked you guys, even though they're U.S. territory, what does it really mean if they have the right to vote? Does that mean they're not citizens? You said yes, that even though they are citizens, they cannot have the right to vote. And that is true. In the island of Puerto Rico, they only vote for the governing body in Puerto Rico. Only if they live in the states, they can vote for within the 50 states. But this allows them to move around and live in every other state. As a result, as once citizens continue to have opportunity to live in the United States, according to author David Luciano's article called "The Adjustment Challenges: Puerto Ricans in New York City from 1938 to 1945, he states that there was a need for immigrants to feel vibrant and accept the majority culture. It's also interesting to note that this was the very first entry for many Puerto Ricans, where the docks of Brooklyn's waterfront, where the Brooklyn colony was situated. This was the first stop-off point in the arrival for many of the Puerto Rican immigrants who arrived in Brooklyn, and eventually moved into Harlem and other parts of the city. He goes on to state that the Brooklyn's waterfronts provided a hope and escape for dire economic conditions that prevailed in their native homeland. And this was because at the time the island was so compact, they needed better jobs, they wanted to provide for their families. They decided to move their families over here for better opportunity. And in conclusion, I learned a lot by studying through the speech about the history of Puerto Rico. Through the speech, I was able to learn the true meaning of what it means to be Puerto Rican historically. You see, Puerto Rico it's just a place. It's just a place. It's not about the island. It's about the people. It's about the families. It's about the lifelong friendships that you make along the way. And through the sacrifices of those that came before, we learn the history and the immigration and the citizen process, and that they sacrificed for us. Thank you.